Okay, today the question is how to do an insightful reading for another person. So I'm talking about doing like a spiritual reading where you sit down with someone and you, however the process that you do it, and you do a reading for another person, so you tell them things about their life, their relationships, their career, whatever. I think you understand doing a reading for another person. This is something that I do. I do readings for other people. If you're watching this and you would like to have a reading done by me, then just reach out to me in the ways that you can see around this video, and we can discuss it, and I can do a reading for you. Anyway, so to become better at this, I am going to ask the question today: how to do an insightful reading for another person. How to do an insightful reading for another person. I did actually have a drink before I started filming, but I think it's a habit now. I've got to do it again. Hydrate the antenna. Okay. Let's see what we got. Greetings and thank you for the question. How to do an insightful reading for another person. Let's begin by speaking in terms of perspective and identity. There is only one. Everything is contained within the one thing. So you and we are the one thing. And there are many layers to this relationship. So you are the group being, and you are part of yet a larger group being, which is part of yet a larger group being, which is part of yet a larger group being, and so on until everything is part of the one. So, we will reiterate this concept very briefly because it's something that we have discussed in channels numerous times before. Your body is composed of trillions of cells. Each of those cells is a unique consciousness, and together they comprise you. So you are the God of your cells, in a way. So you are a group being. Even the cell itself is comprised of many trillions of atoms. Each of those atoms are a unique consciousness. And so the cell itself is comprised of many trillions of unique consciousness and is also a group being. This is the fractal nature of existence. The one is the ultimate group being, and everything within it is also a group being, right down to the subatomic particle. Because, as your scientists will discover, subatomic particles are infinitely divisible. So every particle still has an infinitum of yet smaller particles within it. So every particle in existence is a group being. Extrapolating towards the macro, you are part of the larger group being, which is the humanity being. The humanity being is the being which includes all of humanity. It is a fifth dimensional awareness which now is waking as humanity transitions into the fifth dimensional state. It is the awakening of the humanity being. And when the transition is fully completed into the fifth dimension, humanity shall be a single being. The humanity being. Your individual quality will be retained. But you will have a sense of connectiveness, a sense of union with all other aspects of this one being your fellow human beings, that you will be one being. And this extrapolation goes on. The humanity being is within the group being of the earth, and the earth is in with the group being of the solar system being, and so on and so on and so on. We begin by making this point because the way the question is posed, how do you do an insightful reading for another person? Well, we would like to draw your attention to the fact that this other person is actually you, because you are the one thing. You are both perspectives of the one. And closer to home, you are both perspectives of the humanity being. You and the person that you do the reading for are, in fact, unique perspectives of the same group being, the humanity being. So, it could be said, or it could be asked, how do you do an insightful reading for another aspect of self? For a different perspective of the same thing which I also am. This thought paradigm brings your focus to the point of coalescence. In the 3D, it appears that you are different beings. The one you are doing the reading for and yourself, different beings. Defined very visually by borders. Your borders contain you, their borders contain them. You are separate beings. But of course, this is not so. You are the same being. And as you are the same being, then in the non-physical aspect of both of you, there is a point where there is coalescence, where the division recedes to union, to oneness. So when you are with another person, doing a reading for them, if your focus, if your energetic state can be at this point where there is coalescence, where there is union, where there is oneness, then the mystery of seeing into another person becomes less so. Because now it is insight into self. Insight into this one being which you both are. And so this requires an expanded state of self, an expanded concept of who you are. If you are very focused on what you see in the mirror, that you are the avatar, and you are ruled by the mind, without awareness of your extra dimensionality, that you are a fifth dimensional being, then this will be difficult. However, if you are cognizant that you are a fifth dimensional being, your higher self, the true essence of who you are, is really who you are. And this avatar you see in the mirror is just a collection of assets, not truly who you are. It's just an apparatus that you have manifested, allowing you to integrate into a 3D experience. When you have this awareness, this expanded state, this higher self perspective, where you have disidentified from the mind, disidentified from the body, the personality, then in your fifth dimensional awareness, you can have a oneness with the fifth dimensional aspect of the person that you're doing the reading for. Because it is in the fifth dimensional perspective, in the fifth dimensional state, that you and them integrate, coalesce to a oneness, which is the humanity being. And in this state of oneness, it is with greater clarity that you can see into this person. And we don't say into this other person, because there is no other. There is only oneness. Then the mystery of who they are begins to fall away. And what is left is an expanded extrapolation of self. To do this requires not only a matured higher self-awareness, where you are the higher self animating the avatar, and the mind is relegated to servant to the higher self, being called upon to facilitate the desires of the higher self, and then relegated back to science, back to silence when his duty is completed. And in those moments, you are just an awareness in a silent mindscape. You are the higher self, literally, in this state. Literally the higher self animating the avatar. So we have this first step of the higher self-awareness. The second part of this process, to do an insightful reading for another aspect of self, this other perspective of the same thing, which you are, is a deep empathy. It is a profound love of self that spills over into this extrapolated understanding of self, this expanded realization that you are them and they are you. So this deep love for self includes all others. When you have the expanded fifth dimensional awareness and you can integrate or be aware of your integration into the one thing with this other perspective of the one thing that you are doing the reading for. When there is deep empathy, extending from deep love, then the focus will naturally transition to the place where both of you coalesce, integrate into the one being, where there is awareness that you are one. And if you can hold this geometry, if you can maintain this state of loving empathy, of connectiveness, recognition of the oneness which you both are, and the person you are with is also in a state of openness and love and empathy, which is based on your instruction. Instructing them so, before the session begins, to be open, to be loving, to be empathic, to allow the connection to occur, to have recognition of your oneness, of your integration, of your coalescence. And of course you would adapt and customize this understanding based on your intuitive feeling about what this person is prepared to hear. Then in this state of connectedness, you allow the intuitive flow into the mindscape. And from the higher self perspective, you observe what is coming into the mindscape. And from there, you describe, you relay, you give to them what you are receiving from them. Return it to them in a way that they can have understanding. This is not a complicated procedure. It is something which is an innate capacity in all of the human field. And your capacity to do it well is reliant on an expanded understanding of self, higher self-awareness, deep love and empathy, but also on practice, on continuing to develop the skill, and to relinquish fear and have faith that if you continue to exercise this capacity, then your ability at it will inevitably increase. For you, Murray, the channeler, we say that you have this as a capacity which is in a very enhanced state because of the work you have done on understanding the self, on disidentifying from the avatar and moving your conscious focus into the higher self perspective. And you are a soft and a deeply loving being. So it is with confidence that you can do these readings. Now there is something we wish to add to this conversation, which is about connection, coalescence, integration to the oneness without taking on those energetic artifacts within the other person which would be unwanted, which would be detrimental, which would bring cacophony to your vibration. So, to keep yourself in a way inoculated from the energetic turbulence they have within, then maintain a strong frame. Have a very refined and symphonic vibration. Be very clean within self, so there is no cacophony within self. And when this is so, when you are able to go to them with a very demarked, defined geometry, then you will create a resonance within them rather than they create a resonance of cacophony in self. You will create a resonance of symphony within them, And this will be your inoculation. And then your peering into them will be more of, using an analogy, to be in a dark room with a torch, with a flashlight, and shining it about the room to see what is in there, to get understanding of what is present, what is so, and also guidance on what is to be, what can be, what is potential. However, if you go into these moments where you take your focal point down to a place, or up to a place, depending on how you like to use the metaphor, where there is integration, coalescence, the recognition of oneness, and you have gone there when you are yourself in a state of cacophony, dealing with unpleasant emotionality because of something which has not been resolved within self, then that cacophony you take into that union makes you porous. And so instead of you being a symphonic resonance which creates symphony in them, you will instead be a cacophony, and you will absorb what is in them. So these are the two paradigms. To be very well adjusted within self, so that your defined geometry is like a flashlight glowing into their space. So you are inoculated, you are protected, you're within your own geometry, and yet glowing into their space, being able to see what is there. And the other paradigm is to go there when you are not in a state of clarity within self, when you have some unresolved, difficult emotionality, and your cacophony makes you a sponge for what is in them. And you absorb their struggles, their cacophony, their turbulence. And then when you have completed this deep union and the reading is done, you will take with you out into your own life artifacts of the emotional turbulence they brought to that union. In both of these paradigms, being the light or being the sponge, you still have the capacity to see very deeply into another person. So even if you go into this union with a cacophony within self, it is still possible to see very deeply within this other person, because you absorb them, and then you analyze within self what you have absorbed, and then you can still into it and relay back to them what it is you have found. But if you are going to do this professionally and spending time with people regularly, connected in a very deep and profound union, and your methodology is to absorb them into self and then examine within self to relay back to them what you have absorbed, your existence will become complicated, will become difficult, will become painful, and over time will develop into a trauma. So if that is your method, then you will burn out. You will be taxed. You will hold within self a sense of dread, sadness, depression, anger, and so on, which do not make sense within the life that you are living, that seem incongruent to the reality you have manifested. However, over time, if you maintain this and it becomes a chronic state, then your life will begin to reflect the emotional state. Congruency will develop, and your life will become very more difficult than it needs to be, because this is the mechanism of manifestation. Your state of being precedes your experience. So if your state of being is being repeatedly toxified with the cacophony of those people you form a deep union with during your reading sessions, then over time your life will manifest in a way which is congruent to this state of being. So if you are watching this and it is your desire to do readings for other people, then it is with caution that you approach this offering. If you have not resolved the darkest places within self, then you are vulnerable to creating difficulty in your life. To being the dysfunctional psychic. The person that is known as being spiritual, being capable of deep and profound readings, and yet their own life is turmoil, is chaos. This is a common scenario. The dysfunctional psychic is commonly played out because the understanding of the importance to be clarified within self so that you can be the flashlight rather than the sponge is less understood. So, in conclusion, let's reiterate the main points in this process of being able to do insightful readings for another person. We begin by saying, work on self so that you are healed within and you have a symphonic internal state where there is harmony and the pain has been resolved. And this is accelerated when you become more of the higher self-awareness and less identified with the avatar. Next, go into these sessions with the awareness that this person you are going to help with the reading is in fact the same being as you are. It is another perspective of the same thing, which you both are. It is another facet of self. And so the deep love that you feel for self includes them, because they are the self which you are. they are a different perspective of the same thing. And this will be even more so enhanced for the connectiveness, so you can peer into them if they are also in a state of openness, of love, of empathy, recognizing there is a oneness which you share. So this is something to instruct them in at the beginning of the session. Customizing that teaching in a way which is easy for them to integrate, which is not too weird or too woo-woo, such that it makes them feel uncomfortable because it's too intimate. So use your intuition, spend some time in discussion just to get a feeling of them and who they are, where they're at, and then customize that understanding where they can incorporate it, use it to enhance the capacity of the reading. And it is important, if you are going to do this professionally, if this is going to be something which you do over and over, that you are inoculated from the experience, that you don't take into self the cacophony, the turbulence, the energetic eddies that are swirling within this other person into you also. Because your life will be one of opening your suitcase and stuffing other people's trauma, other people's drama into it, and then taking that with you when you leave the union. And this is why we keep repeating, it is important that you do work in self, that you understand self, that you resolve the pains, the conflicts within self, that you look at the areas of your life which are painful, which have been painful in the past, and you process them, you understand them. You move out of your identity in them. Relinquish the control they have over you. Unflinch the areas of your energetic matrix which are tightened, which are firm, because they are protecting you from the recurrence of the pain you felt when these events happened earlier in your life. So you are transitioning more and more out of the identity in the avatar that was hurt, and more into this higher self perspective where you are the infinite, immortal, invulnerable being that cannot be touched by what happens to the avatar, because you are not the avatar. You are the infinite, immortal, invulnerable, energetic which animates the avatar. And this separateness will be instrumental in resolution. So when you go into this deep, intimate union, where you go to the place of coalescence, integration, oneness with that person you wish to help in the reading, you have a very firm and symphonic, well-defined geometry. So you glow into their space and can see deeply into them, in contrast to being a cacophony of energy, porous, which when you go into them at this place of union, you absorb their chaos, you absorb their energetic turmoil as the sponge. Because this latter scenario will lead to burnout. Whereas the former scenario, where you resolve the conflicts, the misunderstandings within self, will allow you to see deeply into another person, to relate to them very profound understandings of self, of life, and yet you can then disconnect, separate from this deep, intimate coalescence and be untouched. Return to your state of clarity, of resolution, of symphony, allowing you to do this over and over and over and over without any detriment to self. And bonus from this experience is where you will be like a healing crystal to those that you do the readings with. Because when you go into this place of coalescence and you hold the space, you resonate with a very refined and clarified geometry because of the work you have done on self, because of your expanded state, because you have unflinched your energetic field, return to a state of open softness, then this geometry will create a symphony of vibration within them. And their geometry will begin to adapt and change to this state of less density, more light. So they will leave the readings not only in a state of appreciative awe for the guidance and the understandings you have provided for them, but you will have also ignited a light within them. They will shine brighter. They will feel better about who they are, the lives they live. They will have a greater clarity, a lightness, which they did not have when they came to the session. And so they will be inclined to return not just to receive more guidance, but also to receive the cleansing of sharing the same space with you, to be charged up, to be vibrating like the crystal that you are. And they will tell their friends of the experience, of the guidance they achieved, and when they speak of it and remember the experience, they will in those moments glow and shine and vibrate at a resonance which is attractive to those they are telling this information to. And their friends and family who are listening will have a sense of, I wish also to have this experience. I wish also to glow, to be refined, to be more symphonic within self. While they may not have conscious understanding in this way that we are describing it now, they will have an intuition. They will have a glint of higher self-awareness breaking through into their conscious state. Will they recognize this experience is something which will be nourishing. And your client base will grow in this very natural and organic way. Your sunshine will spread and ripple across the community, and the flowers of all these other perspectives of self, like sunflowers, will turn toward you as you radiate this energy. And many will make the journey to be in the presence of your glow, so they may absorb not just the guidance and understanding, but also this clarifying geometric state, which brings an internal harmony, a greater joy, an opened, expanded capacity for love. So, we have given you the toolkit, the basic understanding of how this works, and how to do it successfully, lovingly, empathically, without harm to self, so that you can make a profound impact, not just in the life of individuals, but in also the lives of those around these individuals. The ripple, beginning from the drop in the pond. So if you are inclined to have this as a feature of your life, we encourage you to do so. Because it is the utilization of the toolkits you have been provided. You have been engineered with these capacities. And yet, mostly so in the human field, so much of what is available, so much richness, so much functionality is not being utilized. You have been given, by design, a very profound instrument. And it has been given to you with the intent that there will be a time when all of these underutilized, latent capacities in humanity will be part of everyday life. That you shall become a very sophisticated and complex being. Complex only from the standpoint that there is so much you can do. There is so much capacity and functionality within the avatar which you animate. When all of it is being utilized, you will be a very fully developed and sophisticated being. So this transition is underway, and utilizing these capacities is moving humanity forward. It is further stepping into the group being that you are, the humanity being. It is that awakening. Because your coalescence into the single being with another person is a literal awakening of the fifth dimensional being. The fifth dimensional humanity being. So we encourage you to experiment, to play around, to have fun, to expand and grow into what has been given to you, what hasn't been intended to be utilized in the design. Because much lays latent, so much. And it will remain to be latent unless it is purposefully utilized. And that requires experimentation. It requires a fascination of those aspects of self which are invisible, which are intangible, which are extra-dimensional. It's an exciting time, and we hope that you experiment with what it means to be a human being and to discover that there is so much more than most of humanity believes there to be. Thank you. We love you.